Measure another man is not the man's color, but the man's deeds, the man's conscious behavior, the man's intentions. And when you use that as a standard of measurement or judgment, you never go wrong. But when you just judge a man because of the color of his skin, then you're committing a crime. The number of dark-skinned people in the Western Hemisphere, you can see that there are probably over 100 million when you consider Brazil as two-thirds what we would call colored or non-white, and Venezuela and the Honduras and the other Central American countries, Cuba and the Jamaica and the United States and even Canada. When you total all these people up, you have probably over 100 million. Newly awakened people all over the world pose a problem for what's known as Western interests, which is imperialism, colonialism, and all these other negative isms or vulturistic isms. Are in Washington, D.C. in positions of power, and from Washington, D.C. they exercise the same forms of brutal oppression against dark-skinned people in South and North Vietnam, or in the Congo, or in Cuba, or in any other place on this earth where they're trying to exploit and oppress. This is a society whose government doesn't hesitate to inflict the most brutal form of punishment and oppression upon dark-skinned people all over the world when their interests are at stake. But that, with all of that violence that they display at the international level, when you and I want just a little bit of freedom, we're supposed to be nonviolent. They're violent. They're violent in Korea, they're violent in Germany, they're violent in the South Pacific, they're violent in Cuba, they're violent wherever they go. But when it comes time for you and me to protect ourselves against lynchers, they tell us to be nonviolent. One of the shrewd ways that they use the press to project us in the eye or image of a criminal, they take statistics, feed these statistics to the public, primarily the white public. Whatever the government is going to do, it always wants the public on its side. So they use the press to create images. And at the local level, they'll create an image by feeding statistics to the press, through the press, showing the high crime rate in the Negro community. And as soon as this high crime rate is emphasized through the press, then people begin to look upon the Negro community as a community of criminals. And then any Negro in the community can be stopped in the street, put your hands up, and they pat you down. You might be a doctor, a lawyer, a preacher. But despite your professional standing, you'll find that you're the same victim as the man who's in the alley, just because you're black and you live in a black community which has been projected as a community of criminals. This is done. And once the public accepts this image also, it paves the way for a police state type activity in the Negro community. They can use any kind of brutal method to suppress blacks because they're criminals anyway. And what has given this image? The press. If you'll notice, they referred to the rioters as vandals, hoodlums, thieves. They tried to make it appear that skillfully took the burden off the society for its failure to correct these negative conditions in the black community. Took the burden completely off the society and put it right on the community by using the press to make it appear that the looting and all of this was proof that the whole act was nothing but vandals and robbers and thieves who weren't really interested in anything other than that which was negative. And I hear many old, dumb, brainwashed Negroes who parrot the same old party line that the man handed down in his paper. It was not the case that they were just knocking out store windows ignorantly. In Harlem, for instance, all of the stores are owned by white people. All the buildings are owned by white people. The blacks are paying rent, buying the groceries. But they don't own the stores, the clothing stores, food stores, any kind of store. Don't even own the homes that they live in. Rundown apartment dwellings, the black man in Harlem pays more money for it than the man down in the rich Park Avenue section. It costs us more money to live in the slum than it costs them to live down on Park Avenue. And black people in Harlem know this. And the white merchants charge us more money for food in Harlem. And it's the cheap food. It's the worst food. We have to pay more money for it than the man has to pay for it downtown. So black people know that they're being exploited and that their blood is being sucked, and they see no way out of it. So finally, when the thing is sparked, the white man is not there. He's gone. The merchant is not there. The landlord is not there. The one he considers to be the enemy isn't there. So they knock at his property. This is what makes them knock down the store windows and set fire to things and things of that sort. It's not that they're thieves, but they try and project the image to the public that this is being done by thieves and thieves alone. And they ignore the fact that, no, it is not thievery alone. It's a corrupt, vicious, hypocritical system that has castrated the black man, and the only way the black man can get back at it is to strike it in the only way he knows how. You begin to start thinking for yourself. You frighten them, and they try and block your getting to the public for fear that if the public listens to you, then the public won't listen to them anymore. In the Congo, airplanes were dropping bombs on African villages. African villages don't have a defense against bombs, and the pilot can't tell who the bomb is being dropped upon. When a bomb hits a village, everything goes. And these pilots, filled with flying planes filled with bombs, dropping these bombs on African villages, were destroying women, were destroying children, were destroying babies. You never heard any outcry over here about that. And it had started way back in June. They would drop bombs on African villages that would blow that village apart and everything in it. Man, woman, child, and baby. No outcry, no sympathy, no support, no concern, because the press didn't project it in such a way that it would be designed to get your sympathy. They know how to put something so that you'll sympathize with it, and they know how to put it so you'll be against it. I'm telling you, they are masters. This was mass murder in the Congo of women and children and babies. But there was no outcry even from the white liberals. Why? Because they made it appear that it was a humanitarian project. They said that the planes were being flown by American-trained anti-Castro Cuban pilots. This is propaganda too. As soon as you hear that it's American-trained, you say, oh, that's all right, that's us. And the anti-Castro Cubans, oh, that's all right too, because if they're against Castro, whoever else they're against, that's good, because Castro is a monster. But you see how step by step they grab your mind? And these pilots are hired. Their salaries are paid by the United States government. They're called mercenaries. He kills you for blood money. He's a hired killer. That's what a mercenary means. And they're able to take these hired killers, put them in American planes with American bombs, and drop them on African villages, blowing to bits, black men, black women, black children, black babies, and you black people sitting over here cool, like it doesn't even involve you. Do it to them today, and do it to you tomorrow. Because you and I and they are all the same. They call it a humanitarian project, and that they're doing it in the name of freedom. And all of this, these glorious terms are used to pave the way in your mind for what they're going to do. Then they take Shombi. He's the worst African that was ever born. The lowest type that was ever born. He's a murderer himself. He's the murderer of Lumumba, the former prime minister of the Congo. He's a murderer with an international stature as a murderer. Yet the United States government went and got Shombi in Spain and put him as the head of the Congolese government. Imagine that. This is criminal. So the United States takes him, puts him over the Congo, and supports his government with your tax dollars. Now, in other words, they hire him to occupy the position as head of state over the Congo. A killer. He is a hired killer himself. His salary paid by the United States government. And his first move is to bring in South Africans who hate everything in sight. He hires those South Africans to come and kill his own Congolese people. And the United States again pays their salary. They justify the usage of Shombi as the present head of state by saying he's the only African who can unite or bring unity to the Congo. Has he brought unity to the Congo? The real reason for wanting Chombe there was so that Chombe could invite them to come in. No other African head of state would have dared to invite outside powers, so they put Chombe there. And as soon as Chombe got there, then he invited them to bring paratroopers from Belgium in the United States transport planes to try and recapture the Congo. This was all a cold-blooded act on the part of your Western powers, namely the Western powers here in the United States, the interest in the United States, in England, in France, and in Belgium, and so forth. They want the wealth of the Congo, plus its strategic geographic position. The process that was used by the press, first they fanned the flame in such a manner to create hysteria in the mind of the public, and then they shift gears and fan the flame in a manner designed to get the sympathy of the public. And once they go from hysteria to sympathy, their next step is to get the public to support them in whatever act they're getting ready to go down. They use the press to emphasize that white hostages are being held by cannibals. Imagine that. Or white priests, white missionaries, white nuns. They don't say nuns. White nuns. You know what the paper said right here in Detroit. White missionaries. Not just a missionary. A white nun. As if there's a difference between a white nun and a black nun. Or a white priest and a black priest. Judge them by their deeds, by their conscious behavior. And you know how they've been consciously behaving in the Congo, and how they consciously behave in Vietnam, and how they consciously behave right now in Alabama and Mississippi. No Congolese troops have ever won any victories whatsoever for the present Congolese government. Congolese soldiers won't even fight unless they're forced to. But the fighters in the Congo were the freedom fighters, these brothers from the Oriental Eastern province. And they fought with stones and sticks and rocks, spears and arrows. And the only time they had a gun was when they got some soldier who had it, and they'd kill him and take his gun. But they were winning. They took over 2/3 of the Congo, showing you they were fighting from their heart. Whereas these other people, their heart wasn't in it. And because of the fighting spirit of these people, it will be impossible for Chombe to remain as head of state over the Congo without additional troops, white troops, constantly being brought in from South Africa or elsewhere. But sooner or later, these troops are going to give out, and then America is going to have to increase her troops, like she did in South Vietnam. You know, she has she's not at war over there. You know, they're only over there advising. They got about 20,000 advisors. You know, they're going to have to end up doing the same thing in the Congo. They'll be trapped. They'll have to eventually send American troops to occupy the Congo, because the African freedom fighters are going to fight. They're not going to give up 1 inch without fighting back. That they realize now on the African continent what's at stake, and how much all of these Western powers have in common in what they're doing in cahoots with each other behind the closed door. So on the African continent, they are training Africans to be soldiers so that they can invade each one of these countries and take it over and give it to their rightful people. Not only do they not intend for the Congo to fall into African hands because of its mineral wealth, and it has the greatest deposits of some of the richest elements or minerals of any other area on this earth. They don't intend to give it up because of its wealth. Another reason they don't intend to give it up, if you look at the map, you'll see that it is so strategically located geographically, wherein if a real, genuine African government were to come in power over the Congo, then it would be possible for African troops from all countries to invade Angola, which is a Portuguese possession. And if Angola fell, and it would fall, then it would only be a matter of time before Southwest Africa, Southern Rhodesia, and Bechuanaland also would fall, and it would put African troops right on the border of South Africa. And that's where they really want to get, at that man down there in South Africa. And the United States interests are involved in blocking this. They got money tied up in the Congo. Some of the most powerful political figures in this country, some of them governors over states, got interest in the Congo, and got interest in South Africa, and got interest all over the African continent, and go there. And as the Africans awaken and realize this, it makes them filled with the incentive to never rest until that exploiter is driven out.